Good afternoon, my friends. This is Paul, and today I'm going to be reviewing to you Danganronpa V3 Killing Harmony Anniversary Edition for the Nintendo Switch. This is the third main game in the Danganronpa trilogy, and a lot of people found the original release to be pretty divisive. Admittedly, the Switch version does basically nothing to change that, which is totally okay, because I really like Killing Harmony, and I was one of the few people that actually really enjoyed its first and last chapters. Yes, I am one of the defenders of that ending. Fight me in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about the main game for the first part. So, this was the first game that was originally released on a console. So as a result, there was a bigger budget and a more expansive ability to really make the title not feel so underwhelming, because the original games were originally released on handheld. The environments feel much more vibrant and detailed. The character models have a level of shading and brightness to them that makes them feel slightly less like the ugly cardboard cutouts in the previous game. And the class trials feel a lot more dynamic. There's better camera angles, there's better cinematography for everything. And even the voice acting seems to have gotten better. The voice acting has been legendary in all three games, and even in Ultra Despair Girls from the little bit that I saw of that. But in V3, it's as though the voice actors went above and beyond, trying to deliver really believable performances. Even the characters that I hated did a phenomenal job of playing their character role to the best of their ability. And this is especially amazing because one cool thing about Killing Harmony is that every single character was voiced by someone who worked on a previous Danganronpa game. So it's basically an all-star cast of returning veterans, and every single one of them still hasn't lost their touch. With the exception of Chapter 1, where the actor that played Monokuma had a hard time getting back into character. And so Monokuma kind of sounds a little bit weird in this game, like he swallowed up some helium, or maybe he accidentally played Mickey Mouse, but thankfully the actor learned how to get back into character by Chapter 2 and beyond. Same thing with Kaito's character, although in his case it just sounds like he's been smoking a lot, as opposed to getting back in character, because Kaito's a whole new character. Now, Killing Harmony is more or less yet another killing game, but it does provide a lot of new features and improvements to the established formula, as if you thought Spike Chunsoft didn't already improve well enough in Goodbye Despair. One of the biggest strengths of the Switch version is that, like every other Anniversary Edition Danganronpa game, there's a gallery where you can use the mono coins to view concept art, illustrations, music, and a whole bunch of bonus material. However, the problem I had with the previous two games was that you had to unlock the various collectibles with mono coins. In this version, you have a shooter. If you hold down the R button while you're investigating a room, you can use a blaster, it's not really clear where the blaster is coming from, to shoot down various objects, and if you shoot objects enough, they'll release mono coins. You can even do this in rooms you've already explored, although you'll get less mono coins than from an initial discovery. So that means that, unlike the first two games, you don't have to spam replaying the trials over and over again just to refill your mono coins. And as a result, I had so many by the end of my save file that I actually had to spend some of my mono coins on some of the material before I had beaten the game so that I could actually get more, because you get capped off at 999. So I don't know if that's what the developers intended for the original release, but it sure works well on the Switch. In the courtrooms, you still have the usual agreeing and disagreeing with the statements as they come along. However, if you agree or disagree at exactly the right point, you get what's called a V-agree or V-counter, where you'll get extra mono coins by hitting it directly at the right spot. So that gives a little bit of strategy in maybe you don't just want to blindly shoot your truth bullets at these statements. You might want to shoot them at exactly the right point. You also have a new type of bullet, which is called a lie bullet. Basically, you can charge up one of your truth bullets so that it becomes the opposite of what you're saying. So if you hit a contradiction, you can try to lie and say, no, I'm going to turn the trial in my own direction. To keep these bullets from being too overpowered, The game will take away your influence, which is basically your health meter, if you shoot wrongly. Even if you miss what you're trying to say, you'll lose health. So you really want to make sure you know what you're doing. Now, if you're the type that feels uneasy about this mechanic, the game makes it very clear when you have to lie versus when it's more of an experimentation. But it does encourage replay value on the trials, as you can get additional mono coins if you successfully lie your way through a non-stop debate. And it doesn't change the direction of the conversation a whole lot. It's more or less just a minute of your time that's slightly different. But people that replay Danganronpa class trials usually will skip through certain parts that they find repetitive, so this will give you an excuse to actually listen and say, oh, now the characters have something different to say. That's an interesting spin to take the trial in. It doesn't drastically change anything. It's not like the Zero Escape games where it might give you a whole alternate timeline or anything like that. Just a little extra way to get around the conversation. There are also quite a lot of new mini-games here. I don't know if I'm going to want to explain all of them to you, but I'll try my best. There's the Mind Mine, where you have to click on cubes of a certain color to make them disappear, but if you have one cube by itself, then you'll have to tap it multiple times and you'll get a time penalty. And your objective is to try to uncover the object that's the answer to a question. You'll also have the Scrum debates, where some of the students will disagree with each other, and so the courtroom seats will split into two different sides. And then you'll have to present an argument in your favor to try to prove that your side is the correct one, which involves going through a list of words and finding the word that matches your opponent's testimony. It's really hard to explain without footage, but basically you just have to be paying attention to very specific wordplay used and use the identical word. And on repeat playthroughs, the game usually highlights what that word is, so if it's too complicated, the game will eventually give you some slack. There's also the Mass Panic debate, which is where multiple characters are talking at a time, and there will be 3 different windows, and you'll have to pick out the contradictions among multiple voices talking. This is really cool because in a real-life courtroom debate, I'm pretty sure high school students would be talking over each other and constantly interrupting. And this does a good job of portraying that fact, even if it's not during the entire class trial, although I imagine that would get pretty annoying as well. The closing argument is much, much better than it's ever been. Now, you have to unlock various panels over time, and it's usually very clear what the question is and what the item that you have to put in the manga panels is. So, no complaints from me there. There's this weird minigame from Chapter 2 and beyond called Psych Taxi, where it's kind of like a Crazy Taxi parody, where you move a car along this very low poly road, and you run into cubes that are suspiciously like the ones in the Mario Kart games that have the various phrases and letters on them. And once you spell out the question, then you'll have to literally drive into the right person to get them into the car to answer the question. It's as creepy as it sounds, and if you get the person wrong, then you will end up splatting them. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with too many more mini-games at this point, but I will say that just like the previous games, you can toggle various difficulty settings if you find them too hard. But generally speaking, I found that not a single one of them were duds, and it felt like the Danganronpa team really tried really hard to look at the previous mini-games and ways of getting through the courtrooms in the other games. I said, let's just make it bigger and better. There's also some improvements to exploration and investigations as well. Now when you're in a room and you're trying to toggle which objects are clickable, instead of just making circles appear around clickable objects for just a couple of seconds, now you can make the whole room turn blue, but then everything that you can interact with has sparkles and is colored. So that makes it really easy to investigate, and in fact you can even just keep that display on the whole time if you don't want to be distracted by the background art. I don't know why you would do that, but the fact that you can is really cool, because you would always have to hurry up and try to remember what each circled object was in the previous game. As I also mentioned, there's the shooter, which makes the rooms feel more interactive. The pedometer returns from previous games. Hangouts are made slightly more complicated, as now every single hangout you're now required to actually give the students a present. Now, the game told me that you could choose between the mono machine and a vending machine to get the presents, but I could not get the vending machine to work for some reason. So you still have to do the same old kind of gotcha style of the previous games. Thankfully, it's usually a little bit easier to tell which items the students could particularly like, as the descriptions are much more detailed. So you might say, oh, okay, because this says good for robots, that means this character might like it, because this character is a robot. Speaking of the characters, I really like the change in protagonist direction that Killing Harmony did. It's the first time the main series has had a female protagonist, unless you count Ultra Despair Girls, and Kaede is really cool because she's very well developed. Usually Makoto and Hajime from the previous games were kind of fill-in-the-blank, insert-yourself type characters, but Kaede already has an established personality, an established talent, and oftentimes she will say and do things that the player might not necessarily agree with, making her truly feel like she has a mind of her own. Nearly every second she was on the screen, she was a hoot, and she was one of my favorite characters. It just really helped the protagonists stand out, kind of more like the Zero Escape series, where the protagonists often have a mind of their own. And seeing as this was made by the same company, I'm glad that they took advice from their other franchises. Unfortunately, that's the biggest problem I have with Killing Harmony, is that generally speaking, the cast of characters is the weakest that the series has ever been. That's not to say all of them are bad. Kokichi steals nearly every single scene he's in and is an absolute hoot. Shuichi is pretty okay. He starts out kind of timid, but does a nice job of growing beyond his initial bland design and really feeling like he has his own personality. However, the rest of the characters range from alright to downright annoying, and not just because they're immature high school teenagers, but because they repeat phrases a lot, or they just have an annoying catchphrase or ism that just keeps being overused. And generally speaking, the vast majority of the characters, I didn't really feel anything if they were going through something. I would just be like, they were just characters. So I didn't really feel like I was invested in anyone. I didn't feel like I was growing attached to the cast. I felt like, if anything, Killing Harmony felt more like it was a game that I was playing as opposed to an experience where I could really bond with the characters, which, in hindsight, probably also ruined a lot of the hangout moments. However, the characters that were good were only decent, so not all of them were absolutely terrible. It was definitely a weaker showing, and it definitely made the class trials feel less impactful, because I was like, I don't care if these people die, I don't really like them to begin with. As usual, Chapter 3 was also a dud, but at least in my personal opinion, it was handled at least a little bit better than Danganronpa 2's Chapter 3. Also, Monokuma has kids in this game for some reason, and they're the worst of the whole character lot. They don't really serve a legitimate purpose. Like, I liked the first game better because you just had Monokuma, and Monokuma's a hoot. It sort of feels like the Cubs are so overused that Monokuma feels like he's hardly in the game at all, which is really unfortunate because Monokuma's, a mascot of the Danganronpa series. It's kind of a big deal that he's in the game. Another very interesting addition to Killing Harmony is that you can also go to the casino and the love hotels. Now, I've never actually done the love hotel events. From what I've heard, they're basically extended hangouts where the students can, get more intimate with each other. I've heard that they're not all as overly sexual as you might think. It still just didn't really interest me. And then the casino lets you play various games where you can earn more casino coins, where you can earn really spectacular rewards, such as very rare presents that you can use for hangouts, different backgrounds for your menu, and even additional skills that you can use in the courtroom. Overall, I found Killing Harmony to be a mixed bag. On one hand, the voice acting was legendary, somehow even better than the other games, despite having a completely recycled cast. I personally really loved the ending, and I thought they did such an amazing job wrapping up the series. But its cast of characters was, for the most part, save for a handful of exceptions, very weak and annoying and repetitive, and I didn't really feel a huge sense of attachment. I also think that the vast majority of people might not necessarily want to play Killing Harmony, especially if you're a practicing Catholic, because all three Danganronpa games are very M-rated, no question about it, but Killing Harmony almost seems to go above and beyond, trying to make itself as M-rated and vulgar and sexual as possible, even going so far as to show sexual intercourse at one point in the game. So if you thought, I can handle it, no problem, this game might just well push you over the edge. That being said, most of Killing Harmony's gameplay and trials are really good, and the story for the most part is relatively engaging, especially nearly every scene that Kaede is in. But the character selection could be better. So with that, thank you very much for watching, my friends. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Let me know if there's anything I left out, or if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or critiques, or if you've already beaten the game. What do you think about that ending? And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and video games make more protagonists like Kaede. Bye!